Hello, my name is Elijah Wells, and today's review is James Mangold's new movie, Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. Taking place 12 years after the events of the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, Indiana Jones and his estranged goddaughter, Helena Shaw, being played by Phoebe Waller-Bridge, you may know from the series Fleabag, as they try to locate a device known as Archimedes' Dial, which has the ability to, alter the outcomes of both the past and the present. But they had to keep it in a safe distance away from Jorgen Vollen, who's portrayed by Mads Mikkelsen, who's a Nazi turned NASA scientist, or something out like Operation Paperclip, and he wants the device himself so he can correct Hitler's past mistakes. Even though Disney had not made a big deal about this movie, when they did with like Star Wars, when they said they're going to make a bunch of new trilogies and a bunch of new series, for this one, it's confirmed that this will be for definite the last installment of the Indiana Jones film series, as Harrison Ford is pretty much nearing in his 80s now, so I think it's something he doesn't want to continue going on forward. And of course, this is the first installment since 2008's Kingdom of Crystal Skull, which has been considered one of the most truly divisive sequels ever made. Some consider it okay, while some consider it to be really awful. For my opinion, it's just not a great film in my opinion, due to its overabundance on CGI effects, very sluggish pacing, and the storylines that just kind of go nowhere at the end. But for this one, for Dynasty, James Mangold, who's replacing Steven Spielberg, who had directed all the previous installments, has been given a reins on movies since Spielberg had been working on West Side Story and The Feeblesmen, and working, I think, is a sequel to the 1968 film Bullet. And there are definitely a lot of improvements from Kingdom of Crystal Skulls, and there's a lot of gashing flaws that kind of accepted it from being brilliant like the trilogy, but also definitely a lot better than Crystal Skull. The little MacGuffin in the movie is Archimedes' Dial, which again can reshape reality and time to its liking. Out of the MacGuffins in this movie, it's definitely a lot more of a sophisticated one than Crystal Skull, but nothing as truly iconic, like say the Ark or the Holy Grail or the Village Stones from Temple of Doom. But it's definitely a bit more of an interesting one, a more intricate design to it, and a really interesting philosophy around it, which is again something that is definitely really improved on the last outing back at 2008. And particularly in the setting, since it is set in 1969, as in the space wars have reached its complete apex as they're about to send a man on the moon. They're going to send a man on the moon. And of course, archaeology, like Indiana Jones, feel oddly really out of place, as he is now retiring from his lecturing job, as he's been spending something like 40 years or something like that doing the job, and probably just wants to retire now. And of course, this is basically his last outing, like he said, trying to retrieve the dial. And of course, the setting being a backdrop of not just a space race, but also in the Cold War, since it's like the last film, it's still pretty much in the shadows of the Cold War and the looming threat of the Red Scare, and as well as the hippie movement, which does dabble into quite a bit in a couple of scenes in the film. Delving into the movie a lot more, there's Harrison Ford as Henry Jones, or Indiana Jones in this case, and there's Phoebe Waller-Bridge as his goddaughter, who he hasn't seen for over a decade, and came back into his life to retrieve the MacGuffin and pretty much try and keep him away from the bad guy being played by Mads Mikkelsen. She is actually really brilliant in the movie, very likable as well, and a very charming character. Even though I haven't personally seen Fleabag yet myself, but I think some of my relatives have. But apparently, I hear it's really good. Antonio Banderas is also a ship captain in this movie, and he's also good. He's also really great, even though he's in the movie for 10 minutes tops. Again, and there's also Salah, played by none other than John Rhys Davis, who's back again after skipping out on Kingdom Crystal Skull, and he's also really good in the movie. And even though he's now an American immigrant who came from Egypt now he's living in America, which again feel like it really completed his arc. And of course, we're going to talk about Mads Mikkelsen. I think as Jürgen Von, I think in my opinion, I think he's not the best written villain out of all the Indiana Jones movies. Of course, we do have the Nazis in the first film. We have the Hindu cultist in Temple of Doom, and we do have more Nazis at Last Crusade, and we have the Soviet Union portrayed by Kate Blanchett in Kingdom Crystal Skulls. Even though, yes, this is kind of going back to similar territory when it comes to villains, but I feel like they could have done something a titty bit more different. But again, this is Operation Paperclip, as in where former Nazis and German officials during World War II were hired to help out NASA, and some of them even helped out with launching the Man on the Moon back in 1969 with Apollo 11, which is a very, very interesting thing. Although his motives are very on point, as in he's pretty much being pushed aside by the Nazi party during the last days of World War II, and he did notice a lot of gashing flaws and a lot of really poor decision making by Adolf Hitler, and so he uses the MacGuffin, being the Archimedes dial, to essentially redirect history into Hitler's liking, which again it does dabble into a lot more of a sci-fi territory again with Kingdom of Crystal Skull, but again I feel like motivation's on point, but the writing isn't quite there for Mads Mikkelsen. The action scenes, which I'm very happy to see, are more lenient towards practicality rather than Crystal Skull, which are a lot more CGI, a lot more heavy-handed on computer effects. Well, this time there's a lot more stunt work, noticeably a little bit more. Not as many green screens, even though there's still some stunts in the movie that definitely did a lot of green screen and a lot of CGI effects. But I am very happy to notice a lot of change and a lot of improvement around that particular area where it kind of fell apart, in my opinion, in Kingdom of Crystal Skull. But again, this leads to another problem: the CGI. Okay, yes, there's CGI to create one of the more complex scenes and safety reasons and all that, but there's also in the opening scene where we do see de-aged Harrison Ford at the final years of World War II, and I feel like it looks a little bit awkward in some sense of the word. It just didn't sit right for me for some reason, just because it just didn't look too polished. It looked over polished in a sense of the word. It's starting to come into the valley of uncanny valley, like particularly in the close-up scenes where we do see a close-up of Harrison Ford de-age, and it just didn't look great in my opinion. Even though I do understand the intention, like there's a lot of history with the Dial and Indiana Jones and Jurgen meeting up with Indiana Jones all these years back. But again, I feel like it just did not sit right with me. At least it isn't like resurrecting dead actors from the dead, used in like something like Rogue One, or very controversially in the Flash movie, which I'm very pleased they didn't do. But again, I think something like with de-aging, something like in the Tron film, Tron Legacy, which had a very mixed response, but I personally liked it more when how they did it rather than how Indiana Jones in this movie did it. And of course, there's one massive gashing flaw, particularly in the third act in the movie. Again, this is a non-spoiler channel, since I don't want to give anything away, but in the third act, the movie gets incredibly crazy. I think when the third act comes along and the dial gets activated, I think it just lost me. I'm lost. Like, it just lost me. Like, I think it went from sublime to the uttermost ridiculous, like up to the stratosphere of ridiculousness. Like, okay, in the first film, faces were blown up and were melted like ice cream. Of course, in the second film, the hearts get gouged out and people like fell to their death in the cliffs. And in the third film, people drank the Holy Grail and had their life literally sucked out of them, and fourth film a little bit overkill and a little bit silly, where aliens kind of blow up Kate Blanchett. For this one, since I don't want to personally give away any spoilers, since I did watch it at the cinema I work at, so we went to the first screening that was available, a staff screening, and a couple of my staff members thought the movie was ridiculous, but I personally thought the film was okay. But I think the third act, it just became extremely silly to the point it kind of feels like they went, you know what, let's try to outdo all the movies before and not take into some consideration about the realism, which is what I love about the previous three films. And it just kind of leaned into the weakness of Kingdom of Crystal Skull. Not just with some CG heavy action, but the set pieces just come off as a little bit ridiculous and a little bit cartoony for my liking. Although the movie could be marred with a lot of gashing flaws and and an incredibly incoherent third act and some very dodgy de-aging and some not so great writing on the villain, I feel like this movie is overall a massive improvement of Kingdom of Crystal Skull. I wouldn't say it's an apology, even though I wouldn't say the damage was done after that movie. But in my opinion, I feel like this is a good enough farewell for Indiana Jones as it is. I feel like it could have been a lot better, considering the yes, again, this CG did look a tiny bit sloppy in some areas. The writing and some of the characters could have definitely been improved, and so with the third act that just kind of threw reality out the window. I feel like the action scenes are really great, and the acting of Harrison Ford is good, and the mythos and the MacGuffin's also great, and a couple of interesting storylines are also really good. But I feel like it could have done a little bit more in my liking. I feel like it could have impressed me. It could have had that spark again. It could have had that wow factor. Even though, again, the pacing is really good. And I feel like a lot of it is an improvement of the last film. So I'm feeling a 6 to a 7 out of 10 for Dial of Dynasty. So, what do you think of Dial of Dynasty of Indiana Jones? Let me know in the comments, like this video, subscribe to my channel, follow me on Twitter and Instagram, and this is Elijah Wells, and bye.